time is money, and we can't get more time unless we find a way to portal ourselves places, and airplanes really do that. They open up the world, they shrink the world, and allow us to really do things that we couldn't otherwise do. This picture here is actually over the Capitol, downtown Madison. This is Matt and I's first airplane, a Piper Cherokee. So moving on, Kurt, I appreciate the introduction, talking a little bit about me. Just to expand on that, I got my license when I was 19 years old. You guys can probably do the math there. I graduated from Purdue University. I got a Bachelor of Science in Aviation Technology, Professional Flight, with the idea that we would go and fly for a commercial airline, Delta, United, American, that sort of thing. I, however, had other plans and wanted to really stay on the smaller scale of flying in terms of being personally involved with other pilots. And that led me into aircraft sales, which I've now done for the past 15 years. So in addition to co-running Capital Flight and being our chief pilot, Capital Flight was really started and founded on my background in aircraft sales. And I'll get into that in just a minute. As you mentioned, I've been a flight instructor for the past 16 years, since 2015. Matt and I, my husband and I, have 2 children, Jet, who's almost 3, and Afton, who's 4 months. That picture you see there is Jet flying with Matt and I in the Cirrus when he was about 5 months old. We took him to Mackinac Island with us. Some other photos you'll see there were Matt and I in our first Cherokee, up in the top right. Down in the bottom left was actually a Citation Mustang I delivered to Iceland last December. So just over a year ago, delivered that aircraft to Keflavik, Iceland. The one next to that flying a CJ3 Plus, and to the right of that, flying an Aviat Husky in Gateway, Colorado. So a little bit of background about me, a little bit of background about Capital Flight. We were established in 2013. Matt and I originally focused the company around aircraft sales and airport real estate, buying and selling hangars, building hangars. Our current headquarters are in Middleton, Wisconsin, airport identifier Charlie 29, just west of Madison. We are an authorized Cirrus Training Center. We were actually awarded Cirrus Training Center of the Year in 2018, and that was awarded out of 94 other partners in North America. 18 months after we were established, so we were pretty proud of that distinctive award. We are an Aviat Husky sales center, along with training center and a maintenance center. That's the tailwheel aircraft that you see down in the bottom left of the photos there. We do a ton of events. We host a lot of events out of our hangar, both social events, aviation specific events, and a lot of charity events. In fact, through our hangar space and charity events that we've hosted or donated space for, we've raised over $500,000 for various charities around the world. We are truly focused on living the aviation lifestyle. So although, it's fantastic to get a pilot license and go get breakfast on a Saturday morning, or just go fly over your house or downtown Milwaukee, we like to take it a step further and fly to go get barbecue in Kansas City. We flew down and went to some of the famous haunted houses in Kansas City a couple years ago, got a group of airplanes together and flew down for the night just to go through the country's largest haunted house. Trips to Nashville, flyouts to the Bahamas. It could be dinner on a Sunday night in Chicago or a week-long trip down to the Caribbean. We really focus on teaching people to use these airplanes to shrink the world into a smaller space. We do have plans for expansion into Waukesha in late 2022, so we're really excited about that and to be able to share more information as that project moves along. The reason you're really here is to learn a little bit more about getting a private pilot license. The federal government, Federal Aviation Administration, outlines our requirements to get a license. And in short, you need a minimum of 40 hours flight time. The national average, and actually Capital Flight's average as well, is actually closer to 80 to 90 hours to get a license. For every hour that you fly in the airplane, you should plan for about 1.5 or an hour and a half of time with your instructor, because there's a lot of regulations and concepts that are better taught on the ground rather than in the aircraft. You can get your pilot license fairly quickly if you're really focused. In fact, 3 to 4 months, if you're flying 2 to 3 times a week, is a pretty good average. Most of our students don't have that sort of time to commit because they have full-time careers, jobs, other things going on in their life, and they typically get it in 8 to 10 months, flying 1 to 2 times per week, knowing that life gets in the way and some weeks you won't fly at all, and that's okay. The neat thing about getting your private pilot license is once you have it for life. It never expires, it never goes away. There is a flight review required every 2 years that you can do with any flight instructor. And that review is designed around simply making sure that you are still safe and proficient, especially if you haven't been flying on a regular basis. But once you've invested your time, money, and have committed to getting your license, that license is with you for life. So that's pretty neat. The cost varies widely depending on the equipment that you're flying in. I've tried to put out a few examples here of different aircraft, from the cost-effective Cessna 152 up in the top left, that's a 2-person airplane, down to the Cirrus SR-20 that we primarily train in down in the lower left corner there. The cost variance has a bit more to do with, not only the cost of the airplane. We're talking about a $30,000 Cessna 152 versus potentially a $500,000 Cirrus SR-20. But there's also features that are built into each of those airplanes. And we often recommend learning to fly in what you would like to eventually fly in. So if your ultimate goal is to fly a Cirrus SR-20, if you have the means and can afford to train in an SR-20, then that would be our recommendation, rather than doing it on the cheaper end in a Cessna 152 and then trying to transition into the Cirrus SR-20. Certainly always an option. Anytime anybody's flying, we're happy to see it, regardless of the model that you're flying in. There are also some safety aspects that come with training in the Cirrus that we fly versus some of your other models of aircraft. And the big one that some people are familiar with is the CAPS parachute system, the Cirrus airframe parachute system. It's an entire parachute system that will cover the entire aircraft should you have something catastrophic occur, whether that would be an engine failure or a mid-air collision or some other catastrophic, unsurvivable circumstance. Otherwise, the entire airplane can come down under the safety of a parachute. And to date, that system has saved well over 200 lives. I think it's had upwards of 70 or 80 pulls. And that's a pretty significant savings of lives over the years, with 100% success rate for those CAPS pulls that have been done within tolerances. And that would be, airspeed tolerances and things like that. The private pilot license is truly just your license to learn. You can take that license and you can go out and fly on nice, sunny, clear sky days. But beyond that, you'll want to continue with your training and be able to fly through lower visibility days, cloudy days, fly in the clouds, fly reference to solely instrumentation. And that would be your instrument license. And that would be step 2 of the flight training. And that is, a step that we expect our students will continue on towards, because the safety and statistics for pilots that have an instrument license is pretty significant over having the standard private pilot license. So beyond that, we love to see people continue on with their training. As I mentioned a few times, freedom to fly, and really that is what it gives you. Learning to fly is certainly challenging. A lot of people that are starting their private pilot training perhaps haven't been in school or haven't taken exams or haven't had to study for many, many years, some since possibly high school. And getting back into that mode of learning can be a challenge, but it is extremely rewarding, regardless of your age. If you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, it does not matter, because we all get the same freedom to fly and to travel. And as I mentioned in the screen here, it's not just about manipulating the machine safely and confidently. While those are certainly important aspects, the airplane is a time machine. You know, one of our favorite restaurants to fly down to is Pilot Pete's in Schaumburg. And from Waukesha to Schaumburg, you're probably looking at a 2-hour drive time in the car. 4 hours round trip is probably not a realistic Sunday evening dinner that you'll want to do. However, in the airplane, in the Cirrus SR20, you can be there in under 30 minutes. So a beautiful 30-minute flight along the Chicago skyline, dinner at Pilot Pete's, back home 30 minutes after you're done eating and back in the airplane. Same thing, you know, if we talk about going to Nashville, 2 hours in the airplane, 2 hours home makes for a pretty fun weekend. Now you can do the same thing in the car if you want to drive 8 to 10 hours, but a Friday, Saturday is likely not doable for most people when you're having to spend that much time in the car. So both options will get you to Nashville, but I know who's having a bit more fun when we can do it in just a weekend. So that's kind of the short and skinny of why you should get your license, why you should be interested in getting your license, and how to go about. The last thing I'll say is there are plenty of flight schools out there that will offer intro flights. And my recommendation and suggestion on that is rather than just getting in the airplane and doing an intro flight, you know, for a half hour in a circle, perhaps over your house or over your local neighborhood, would be to get in that airplane and make it a mission. Use the airplane to go down to Chicago and grab dinner. Do a flight path, you know, that you're used to driving, so that you can really realistically see how this does open up the world for you, save you time, and turn you into a time machine. Our flight experiences are typically always, you know, just that, where we have a Chicago flight line sightseeing experience where it's not just getting in the plane for a half an hour and touching the controls. That's all great, but seeing how this will affect your life in the long run is far more effective in really wanting to learn to fly and having motivation behind it. So hopefully that helps you guys see into the world of getting your private pilot license. And if there's any questions, I would definitely welcome hearing them.
Thank you, Jade. That was fantastic. Just a reminder, everybody, you can put in the chat box over on your screen if you do have any specific questions for Jade, and we'll give you a few minutes to do that. I had a couple for you, just as you were talking, Jade.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people come into the office and I don't know if I can learn how to fly, and I'm a little nervous about it. What are some of the things, maybe for people who are really interested in it, but maybe have a little bit of trepidation on should I actually take this next step? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, good question. So certainly that's a pretty common theme of, can I really do this? I'm not good at math. You know, I can't orient myself on the ground, let alone in the air. Am I going to have trouble knowing where I'm at and how to read the maps? And do I need to be good at science? You know, those are all really, really valid questions. And like anything that's worth pursuing, you have to give it time. So most people are not going to hop in the airplane lesson one and land it expertly, even though they've been flying Microsoft Flight Sim for the last 5 years. You know, it's quite a bit different in the airplane. So I would suggest giving yourself a little bit of slack and going up and doing that intro flight, or visiting your local flight school and just sitting in the aircraft. Most flight schools, I would imagine, we're certainly open to it, just inviting you in our building and showing you around. We can hook a power card up to the avionics and kind of show you some of the features that are included. Airplanes have come a long way. You know, we have really creature comforts like air conditioning, like XM radio, XM weather. So not only the comforts that you're used to in your car, but also safety features as well. So that would be my suggestion is don't wait, go out to your local flight school, get a tour, and then set up that intro flight so you can just see what it's all about.
Good advice. And then as someone actually becomes a student, what are some of the attributes that you have noticed in maybe your most successful students?
good question. So consistency is probably the biggest part. And that is where, we're seeing a student on a consistent basis at least once a week, rather than someone who comes in and flies with us 3 times in 1 week and then we don't see them for 3 months. Because at that point, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and you're going to get frustrated in the process because, time wise, it's going to take you much longer. Money wise, it's going to cost a lot more because you're having to, duplicate efforts in your learning process as we have to review things again and again and again. So consistency is certainly key. And then just know that there's going to be some ground school, some book work that goes with flying. Everybody wants to get to the flying portion, and believe me, we do too. As an instructor, that's my favorite place is to be in the airplane, not on the ground. But there are some important topics that are easier discussed on the ground.
Very good. I have one last question because obviously I love flying, but don't see any others in the chat. So maybe we'll call this the last question here. And Jade, if you don't mind at the end, just if you could place your contact information inside the chat box.
Absolutely.
So that everybody can get a hold of you if they do have further questions or want to check out what you're doing. Last question I had is, so someone comes in, they're a little nervous, and then they actually take the flying lessons, they become successful, they get their private pilot license, and then they decide, I want to do something different with my life and I want to fly professionally. Really, I mean, there's a lot of options out there, obviously, but kind of quickly, what are the next steps to do that? How much time does that take? Is there, how much money is involved? Do you need a degree, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so that's not an uncommon thing, because I mean, frankly, once people start flying, they realize how amazing it is, and there could be a transition from your current career into how can I make money flying. We see it more often than not, and the steps are really the same. You have to start building time is kind of the big part to getting a career in aviation if you want to go fly for the commuter airlines, if you will, or American, United Express, those sort of things. Regardless of what you train in, Kurt, the Cessna 150, the Piper Archer, you're going to end up with the same license, right? The private pilot license, moving on to your instrument. But right now, airlines, charter operators, they're looking for people that have experience with what we refer to as glass cockpits. And that's the more advanced avionics flight deck, because that's what we're seeing in the bigger airplanes. And learning in that to start with is helping those pilots to get jobs in the career field that they need. At one time, specifically when I was in school at Purdue with the flight training program, airlines did want to see a 4-year bachelor degree to pursue a professional airline career. That being said, right now, the constant talk is of airline pilot shortage, and that's becoming less and less relevant to have a 4-year undergrad degree because pilots are just in such high demand. Obviously, COVID has had an effect with reduced schedules and pilots being furloughed, but I think once we're on the back end of this and airline travel picks back up, we're going to be back to that pilot shortage discussion. So it's certainly an option to go get your undergrad degree with a focus on aviation, whether that's Purdue or UND or Dubuque or one of the many colleges that offer a degree like that. But I wouldn't hold off on that in terms of moving towards your dreams of just going and getting the training done to move towards that career step. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, it does. That's excellent.
Perfect.
There's so many options in aviation. I've watched Jade and Matt, getting to know them over a couple of years, just really excel at the other side of it that's maybe not seen all the time in our more traditional flight schools. So Jade, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Your experience and resources are all very valuable to everybody who's on the phone here.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to answer questions anytime, give airport tours, airplane tours. Certainly if there's any interest in a flight experience, we'd love to welcome you to our our facility. Kurt, how do I put my contact info? Is it in the chat box? Is that where I'm typing?
Yeah,
Okay.
there should be a chat option down there. Just pop that up and put your info in there. It should go out to everybody.
Perfect.
I encourage you guys to check out Capital Flight's website and check them out in Middleton, and hopefully sooner rather than later in Waukesha. You're really excited about that.
We can't wait.
They can help you with your aviation dreams, whatever they may be, from just taking a flight and seeing the world from the sky or becoming a full professional pilot. Also, thanks to Sam and Drew from Plane Safe Aircraft Maintenance for donating the backdrop of their hangar. It's always fun to get out into our hangars and see what our companies are doing. Reminder to everybody, tomorrow we have the Commemorative Air Force. The commanding officer of that group is going to be joining us, talking about the things they do to keep vintage military aircraft flying and preserve the memory of those who fought in the air for us. And then on Friday we have Midwest Aerial Production, so a little foray into the beginning stages of being a drone operator, whether recreational or commercial. Additionally, we're placing videos on Facebook every day for our younger aviators to be. And on Saturday, there's going to be a challenge to build an aircraft with household materials within your own living room, and send those over to us. We'll do some prize drawings. So as always, if you have anybody that has an interest in aviation, or you yourself have any questions or interest, come on out to Waukesha County Airport. We're your one-stop shop for all your aviation needs. We have resources and everything that you would need in order to learn how to fly or pursue any interest in volunteering or whatever your dreams may be in aviation. So thank you again to Jade, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Come out and visit us, and we'll make sure to keep the coffee warm for you. Have a great day, everybody.